Hi everyone and welcome to season 2 of the Leading Beyond the Lab podcast, proudly sponsored by ARTO, the competitive edge for life sciences talent. I'm your host, Lawrence Rose, and our mission is to shine a light for aspiring scientists and physicians looking to understand what life's really like in the pharmaceutical sector. In each episode, we dive into the stories, insights, and valuable lessons learned that have propelled our guests to remarkable success and impact within their respective disease areas. Now, if you enjoy listening to this episode as much as I enjoyed recording it, be sure to hit subscribe because we'll be releasing new episodes each week. Hey, Bernardo, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So I'll give you a bit of an introduction. So here we have Bernardo, co-founder and chief operating officer of Concerto Biosciences. We're just going to jump straight in. Would you like to give us a bit of an introduction into you, your experience and where you are in your career? Yeah,
absolutely. So my name is Bernardo Cervantes. I'm a co-founder and chief operating officer of Concerto Biosciences. I trained as a scientist. I now play entrepreneur at Concerto Biosciences, where as a company, we discover ingredients and products entirely coming out of bacteria. So we work with microbes and use them to try to solve interesting problems. And on the operations side of the company, for me, I take care of basically what is product development. So we go from as soon as we have a new discovered ingredient or a new discovered product, we'll take that into manufacturability, look at the regulatory aspects of it, go into real world testing, sometimes clinical testing if the product is a therapeutic, for example. And so all of that stuff has been my work lately, which is all to say I don't do science anymore, which is kind of sad.
A bit sad.
That is what I originally.
Microbiome seems to be quite a hot topic at the moment.
Yeah, I mean it's
in granular ways, like in everyday consumption, but also in the pharma space.
In the pharma space, there was a lot of interest in the late 2010s.
Yeah.
What happened? It got very exciting there. Recently there's been a downturn in the investment world, as you know that, and a lot of the microbiome companies have struggled and have gone away, but there are some that are doing good. We just recently got a couple of approvals in this space. There's new therapeutics that have been approved for C. difficile infection, and we think the microbiome world is gonna pick back up and get quite exciting. You know.
So with that mechanism of action, it sounds like the technology that you use can be applied at Concerto to various different targets.
Oh yeah.
So that's interesting in itself. Yeah.
There's a lot of super interesting things that the microbiome or microbes and bacteria in general should be able to do. The science is evolving, sometimes slow, sometimes fast, sometimes slow. Science is getting there. There are a lot of interesting microbes are absolutely everywhere, right? Like they're on this table, they're in there. We have full control of our environment usually, right? Like we control the light and the temperature and the humidity and everything in our environment except for the microbes. All we know to do is to kill every single microbe in the space because we don't know exactly which ones we should maybe have more of and which ones we should have less of. And so we just wipe, and that's how you get it's 99.9% of kills 99.9% of bacteria.
All the time.
Yeah, exactly. And so you end up with spaces that just are completely devoid of bacteria and we have zero control over it. But they do all kinds of interesting, useful things for us. So we, as a company, care a lot about figuring out which are the microbes that are good for us and understanding how to bring them back into our spaces, whether in the form of therapeutics or consumer products, cleaning products. Maybe cleaning this table in the future is not going to be wiping everything away. It's going to be having the right stuff on it.
So what's the entrepreneurial birthing of this idea? So there's 3 founders, right?
Yeah.
So what was the coming together, the idea, the conception, and then we're going to start a business? Because that's exciting.
Yeah, that's a great question. We met in graduate school. This was at MIT.
Yeah.
And we were studying, the three co-founders were studying sort of like slightly different areas of biotech and microbiology. And one of my co-founders, Jared Kay, he is the initial inventor of the core technology. It's called K-chip.
Yeah.
So at his lab at MIT, he was developing K-chip and started thinking about, hey, maybe we can use this as a way to create new products that are interesting to people. Brought along Sherry Ackerman, who's the CEO of the company now, to start thinking about how to start this company, and then eventually realized that they needed someone with some microbiology experience, which is how I came into the game.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and so pretty early on, we sort of like differentiated into this different roles, and like the science, the operations, and the business of it all. And it's been 4.5 years now.
And it's 20 of you. 30
there
now.
are 20 full-time employees now.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, clinical stage. We've been running at it. It's been fun. Yeah.
And so, what was the big inflection point where you thought, "This is serious now"?
Oof. I remember the first we won an award.
Yeah.
That came with some cash, a little bit of cash. Really barely pay. Might be called a salary, but we could kind of pay ourselves a little bit of money, and that was sort of the moment where we were like, oh, now we have resources to try something. Let's leave academia. Let's finish our PhDs. Sherry was doing a postdoc at the time, so she finished her postdoc as well, and we moved out and started a company. And, a single lab bench in a shared space, and at that point there was let's see how it goes, right? It's an experiment.
Yeah, it's fun.
It's a life experiment. I guess. Yeah.
And what gave you what prepared you to have that level of risk management?
Yeah, that's a hard question.
Yeah.
I think I've had a lot of opportunities to learn from some of the smartest people in the world.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like as my career has developed, I've sort of like picked up on a lot of little things here and there. I was lucky to join a venture fund during my PhD, where I was working with them to do some technical diligence. I was serving as sort of like a science brain there, and that gave me this sort of like look into how that world works, how investors think about a potential new company and what are they looking at least from the science side.
And what were if you could summarize those things, because that'd be fascinating. What are they? Yeah,
so they're paying. As when an investor is coming into and looking at a new company, you wanna take care of. There's sort of like the business side, of course, and the science side. And on the science side, usually an investor will bring in some technical folks to look at the technology, and tell you, is it real, right? Like, is it gonna work? And sometimes you can just rely on, this is coming from a big name professor, so I'm just gonna trust that the big name professor knows what they're doing, because they probably do. But sometimes the technology is a little less known, or the names are not as known, and so you bring in some science folks to tell you, is this actually going to work? How much risk is there? And so my first introduction to the word risk happened in that setting, sort of like understanding that and using risk as a multiplication factor, basically, for how much is this idea worth. If the idea is likely to work, then you have a little risk, and then you can give it a higher value or a bigger number that you can invest in, or if it's a complicated technology, then the higher risk, you can use it as a multiplication factor. And then on the business side, I was trying to pretend like, they can probably make money out of this thing. And then the business side, the money side of the investment group, they would generate these reports of like actually how much does a particular technology or asset is going to be valued at what time. So like over time, how much is an asset valued? And therefore, how much money are we going to put in now so that the return on the investment plays out?
And so in your role as COO,
Yeah.
can you talk us through, because that can mean a lot of different responsibilities. Can you talk us through what the key objectives are for you in your role in the company at this time?
Sure. The main goal of the operations side of Concerto is to bring new discoveries into real world testing. We have a core technology that basically turns out interesting new potential ingredients. And in the lab, we can test them in a bunch of different ways, and that gives us an idea of like, this might be a new way to treat eczema, or this might be a new way to, clean a table. But then you have to go and clean some tables, right? Does it actually work? And importantly, to be able to actually clean some tables, it needs to be manufacturable. So you need to be able to scale the manufacturing at a reasonable cost. No one is going to pay thousands of dollars for a cleaning product. You need to be able to make it at a certain amount. It needs to fall within some regulatory landscape. In the United States, that product may be controlled by FDA, or it may be controlled by EPA, depending on where you're working with. And then you go and actually do the test. So cleaning tables might be an easy thing to test, but going into, say, human clinical trials, that's a bit more complicated. So that's big picture what my side of the company does. Yeah.
And so in that role, what have you learned along the way in terms of what were the top 2 or 3 key learnings and lessons that you've learned and now stick by?
Oof, deep.
Yeah, that's what the listeners want to hear.
Yeah. I think the hardest question, and this is probably true of any role, is deciding whether we should do something internally in-house as a company versus outsourcing it to someone else.
Yeah,
that is a complicated question.
You mean from a manufacturing, CROs, CDMOs?
The testing, the manufacturing, If you build the capabilities in-house, then the speed at which you can do that development goes up.
Eventually.
But
not to start with, yeah.
It might take some time to bring
short
up
term,
the
not long term
capability.
game. Yeah.
You have to find the right people. You have to hire the right people. And once you have that, then that team is going to execute at a way faster pace than a third party will. Usually,
is the quality of the work better once they're, or is it because of the ownership, or is this? Do the outsourced partners, do they tend to have, because of their expertise, I suppose, do they have a higher level of quality?
That's an interesting question. There is a mandated level of quality for something, say, like clinical trials.
Yeah.
You are expected to hit certain thresholds of quality. And so I don't know. If done well, both of them should be at the same level of quality to meet the regulations. So I don't know that it might be that some of the third parties have higher quality, but doing sufficient quality is sort of like a mandate. So you're gonna have to get there.
Yeah.
anyways.
Either way.
Yeah.
Yeah. I suppose because it's almost like, because in my mind that's what you're paying for. You're paying for the expertise and the in-house knowledge over years and years. But I can imagine in reality, when someone knows your own molecule, knows your own product, there's a sense of ownership that can sometimes come with higher standards and higher levels of. See what I mean?
Yeah, and if you build the right incentives into the contract, then maybe you can achieve that outside of the company. But having it inside of the company, the biggest advantage is that you're going to encounter problems during the development phase. And when we encounter a problem, say in manufacturing, so we're doing manufacturing in-house, for example, when we encounter a problem, I hear about the problem 3 minutes after we find it, right? And 2 hours later, we are probably already in a conference room talking about how to solve it. And by the next day, we are running the new experiment that will tell us whether we found how to solve it or not. With a third party, it's probably a week before we hear it, and then in the best case scenario, and so it ends up taking 2 to 3 weeks every time there's a little problem. There's this cycle of communication that just takes forever. And so we probably saved like 6 months worth of development time by going inside, even with the hiring and all of that.
And when you think about how you're managing a funding runway and things like that, that's significant.
It's huge.
Yeah. And so continue on the same line then. Is there any other key learnings or lessons you think, I've learned a lot from what happened in XYZ?
Yeah, let's see. People are the most important thing. It's not
so
the
science. True. It sounds cliche, but it's so true.
It sounds
people first,
silly maybe, but it's not the science. It's not even the money. Of course, you need both the science and the money, but the team, building the right team. You do this for a living, finding exactly the right person that can do the job and that fits into the culture and that is excited about the work. It's huge. It's what drives the whole thing.
It's amazing how much the cultural fit of an individual based on where you need to get the business to is important, isn't it? CVs are one thing, or resumes. I'm in America, I should know that. Resumes are one thing, but the cultural fit, their personality type, and how they fit into the dynamic is integral.
How do you look into cultural fits?
So when we qualify the team build, the position, the job, we will really go into detail about what, with the hiring managers and the team, what their thoughts are and what the right person is. So we'll dig into how do we separate the good from the very good people, and typically that's a soft skill related thing. And quite often it'll be things like we need someone hands-on, we need someone that can wear a lot of hats, we need someone that is okay with risk, we need someone that doesn't need to worry about everything being specific to his job or their job description. And usually you'll when you qualify candidates, you'll get signs. So they'll say things like they'll obsess about the job title is an easy indicator. That's an easy indicator. So if they're doing that, then they use, that tends to be an indicator that they might not be the right type of person for a biotech, where the chief medical officer is fixing their own computer. And the head of clinical operations is doing quality assurance on the side. These are the sort of things I see all the time. The CEO is fixing the photocopier, which is also part of the fun. But so that's a big thing. Other tells, I'd say are candidates that have always worked in the big pharma, and they say that they want to join a biotech. But when you drill into what that means, they go very quiet. And then you have to then pull out of them how they really feel about that. And my job in that process is not to convince or sell or anything like that. If anything, it's the opposite. And that's where people go wrong. I don't think this is right for you because. And then if they challenge that and they come back to that, then there's a fight in there. They might want to do it. And then there's something we're talking about. If they agree, obviously everyone save time, because our job is to do a good job for everyone, not just the client, not just the candidate.
Of course. That makes a lot of sense.
So it's pulling it away almost.
It should be an easy fit from the beginning. If you force it.
Well, if you really want something, and I pull that away, if you really want a new opportunity, or it doesn't have to be a job, it can be anything. You go for it, don't you? It makes you want it more.
Try harder.
So then you've got to prove yourself. You've got to access a different part of your brain to have a different explanation and that kind of thing. And that's what we're trying to tap into. But equally, it can be a case of a candidate saying, "You're right. So I don't want this job, and here's the reasons why." And then you move on, and then you talk to them, you stay in touch, and it's a good relationship. And I appreciate that you haven't wasted their time. So it's fascinating, really.
That is fascinating. We spend a lot of time in the interview process to make sure that we find some, it's painful for everyone, like to spend a lot of time. Nobody wants to spend a lot of time, but it's if we hire the wrong person, it takes so much more energy and effort to fix that mistake than to just do a very long interview process, and not necessarily long in time, but like in depth and wait for the right candidate to actually show up.
I've always felt like with an early stage company, or a company in its infancy, so it hasn't gone on a massive scale up journey yet, the way that the biotech, tech bio, med tech, whatever we call it, the way that their story and their value proposition and their unique selling point, whether it be the way that it benefits the patients or caregivers, or the unique proposition of the molecule that you're working with, or mechanism of action, et cetera, what's different about it, understanding that story, and someone in my position being able to translate that back to the best people is imperative, because the best candidates, particularly if they're brilliant scientifically or medically, they want to understand that. And they lose patients quickly if you can't articulate it properly or answer their questions. So that's something that we're passionate about anyway.
So you're learning a little PhD every time that you run.
I like the way you said that. Yeah, I think there's a very small dynamic there. I mean, we our job is to simplify almost. I suppose,
which is the hardest way of doing it. Actually.
Yeah, we're never going to understand the complex depth that you guys go to, but we, scientifically, but we can translate that into meaningful dynamics from a people perspective.
Yeah,
which is interesting.
That's huge.
So what's the ambition for Concerto? What's the kind of, where do you want to be in X time with what?
We want to bring into this world as many bacterial-based products as we can.
Different targets, or
we're talking human health, food, agriculture, you name it. There's microbes everywhere doing things that we can't even imagine. They've been around forever, way longer than humans have, and they've solved all kinds of problems in all kinds of interesting ways. So it's a huge untapped resource. We want to go into that and find as many of those. So Concerto as a company, like we said, we're 20 full-time employees. We cannot develop a therapeutic and an agricultural product and a food product. That's not going to work. What we can do, though, is become the experts at creating those discoveries, and then partnering with companies that are interested in those kinds of ingredients, those kinds of products, so that the right company can do the later development and bring it into the market, onto shelves on a store or whatever it is. That's the dream. It's sort of, whoever is interested in developing something bacterial based, we will do that discovery for you.
Exciting. And there's a few good companies which have had some significant rounds of funding in that space as well, isn't there? Yeah. You've got, I know there's Quickfire Biosciences in the women's healthcare space. Fantastic. I remember that name because it's my daughter's name. Yeah. So it kind of.
And they're doing great.
Doing good things, aren't they? Yeah.
Fantastic.
So it's fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a couple other companies. There's some Vedanta Biosciences is doing super well. They have assets in phase 2 and phase 3 clinical stage for a couple of different health indications in the gut specifically. That's super interesting, super exciting. I'm a big champion of Vedanta, because I think they have probably what will be the very first defined consortium of bacteria that solves a health problem, and that's going to be huge for the industry. So I'm excited about that.
Oh, they're commercialized.
They are in phase 3 clinical trials.
Oh, nice. Nice. Yeah. If you were going to summarize the top 3 personality traits of people that are successful in your industry, from your experience, what would they be?
They know what they don't know, and they are sincere about it, and they are looking for the experts on that. So they're not trying to solve the problem themselves. They're trying to find the people that are the experts in solving the problem. That's huge. And so in biotech, especially in early biotech, there's a million things to do. Some of which are important, some of which are not that important. And it's especially if you're a first-time founder, like I am, I don't know. A lot of the times I don't know what's the right thing to do and what is not the right thing to do. So finding that human that knows and making sure that they are excited to tell you why, what you should be doing.
Yeah,
that's huge. So being very aware and very comfortable with not having the answers, I think is a super important trait. You need to try very hard. So another trait is it's sort of like being relentless, just never stopping.
Yeah,
always trying it in a different way. One of Concerto's core values is growth by experimentation. We care a lot about running experiments, whether it's in the lab or in the office or just generally in life. Just try it and see how it goes. And it's okay if you fail. You probably will.
Be comfortable with failure. Yeah.
And then we're going to try it in a different way. So being comfortable with failure, exactly, is super important.
It's amazing how important that trait is, isn't it? For the growth zone.
For the growth.
Yeah. So and just being okay with the fact that you're going to get things wrong on that journey.
Yeah.
Like doing a podcast, for example. So I think that's covered off most of the experience and given us a really good insight into the journey of Concerto, what you're doing, what your value proposition is, how you're different from your competitors in the space. So there's 3 co-founders.
Yeah.
You're all in it together. I imagine it's a really close team.
Yeah.
So how do you manage that leadership dynamic to ensure success?
Oh, that's a fantastic question. The number one key there is that the 3 of us need to be happy with each other first, right? It's sort of like the key to be able to be a manager, for example, is to know how to manage yourself first, and then you can manage other people. Like you have to manage your own time, you have to manage yourself well.
It's hard.
So for us to be leaders within our company, we need to be happy leading each other. And so we spend a lot of time building that relationship. There is some level of friendship in that relationship, but it is a professional relationship. It's not a we're super buddies, let's go. We do hang out and do those things occasionally, but it's a lot about being comfortable and understanding each other and knowing when, okay, you and I need to go talk about this separately and solve it and do that. And then just the differentiation of the role, right? So Jared takes care of all of the science leadership, the visionary thoughts and going into Jared's role as a CSO, and working on that space. Sherry leads the company. She's the CEO. Her voice is the voice that everyone wants to hear, both when it's an exciting time and when it's not an exciting time. And so it's super important to sort of like not step on that space, right? Like if there is a message that needs to be delivered at her level, she needs to deliver that message. Yeah. Even though I could say the exact same words or Jared could say the exact same words, those words coming from a CEO. So for example, if there's financial problem, like those words coming from the CEO, like this is our current position, this is how we're thinking about solving it, this is what's going to happen in the next couple of months. That is huge to come from the CEO as opposed to someone else at the company, right? And then on my side, as an operations person, it's entirely about like what are all the things that are happening in the company at any given point in time. So it's like so my role is a lot of be there, be in person, talk to as many people as possible, walk around. There's this concept of management by walking around. I don't know if you've heard about it. It's sort of like
what's that?
Management by walking around.
Yeah.
It's the idea that you as a leader or as a manager in a space, if you look busy, and you probably are, then people will be afraid of asking you a question that might solve the problem, right? Yeah. So
because they tell it themselves, you mean?
Say it again?
Encourages them to solve it themselves.
They will that they could come if they could come to you and you fix a problem from them or whatever, you answer a question, their productivity would like skyrocket. But they don't, because you look busy and they don't want to interrupt you. So the idea is, don't look busy. You stand up and walk around, look like you have free time, and just like, hey, how's it going? And in those spaces, in that free time, they might go, oh, you know this thing that I like, that they think it's a small thing, but at least they're talking to you about it. So that's my side of the leadership in the company, is just be as much as I can with people, learn what they care about, hear them out, and then identify if there are things that need to be solved and bring them up to the rest of the team and think it through. Yeah.
Nice. Well, thank you very much for your time today.
Yeah, absolutely. No, thank you for having me. This was fun.